On that note, I want to invite Esha ji, Arya sir, and Dr. Ashok sir on stage to have a conversation about what exactly is the contribution of technology in the nation building. It will be very inspiring to hear perspectives from Dr. Ashok, Arya sir, and Esha ji, all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Surendra Arya sir. Thank you, Isha. आपने जो लास्ट लाइन कही कि अभी आसमान बाकी है, the sky is still there. So let's start with this. Now, take for example your first move to manufacturing. Of course, the first move was in the LPG cylinder, but let me talk about Maruti. When Maruti initially came to India, every piece, every part, everything came from Japan. The technology was Japanese. You took the bold step saying that we will make all those components out here. And over time, you have done an excellent job. So it is not just, I'm referring to the current focus on Make in India, where everything comes from outside and we assemble. For example, in mobile phone, our value add is only 4 to 5%. And you have taken the next step also, so that no, not just the assembling and manufacturing, but also make every component. But I think even more important, जो आसमान बाकी है, that is the design and development. If you design and develop, then of course you use the components which are in India. And then of course when you manufacture the Indian design product. What do you see the role of R&D and design and going all the way to manufacturing in India?
Thank you, Dr. Sir. What I personally feel when we started, in those days, every die was coming from Japan or Korea or from some other country. All the welding fixtures were coming from outside. And the total design was given to us by Maruti, or Maruti was getting it from Suzuki. But later on, now they give us some space that this part has to go in this area, this part has to go in this area. And we decide what kind of design should it be. Our own people, our designers, they decide, and we give the proposal to Maruti or to any other OEM. And on that basis we do it. When we localized all the dies, again people had many apprehensions that what kind of dies will it be, what kind of quality will it be. But now they have 100% confidence, and we have 8-9 tool rooms in the country, and we are the largest in the country to manufacture dies also. So the full confidence is there. Now, when we were adding many different parts to make it stronger for a particular area, then we thought normally after some time, after a few years, 7-8 years, 10 years, when the car is going through our Indian roads, some kind of noise starts coming and those things. So how to avoid this welding? Then we got into a kind of different technology, which is laser welding. And instead of having too many parts welded together for a particular reinforcement, we decided that in that area only we will have a thicker sheet, or we will have a high tensile steel, so that the strength we are getting what we are getting from 2-3 parts. So those kind of things we started, and today we are again the largest in the country to manufacture welded blanks, and those are all shaped blanks, which is again technology is coming from ArcelorMittal, and we are the joint venture partner with ArcelorMittal in India. So what I am trying to say, that we always kept on thinking, innovating, that in what way we can indigenize, we can help our OEMs, and we remain their very preferred supplier.
Thank you. And maybe I'll ask Isha and then come back to you. Deep tech definitely involves design, R&D, complete control of technology. I'm talking in context of that, yes, we are doing a lot of now parts and a lot of other things where we have even designed some things and manufactured. But our machinery still comes from outside. A lot of machinery comes from outside. I want to move to deep tech. Deep tech, as far as I'm concerned, is to solve our problems. It's not just about manufacturing. It's to solve the large problems of the country. It is in that context that I want to ask you, how do you see deep tech and where does it really fit in, and what's the role of the academia, government, corporates in that?
I think deep tech, like you rightly said, Jhunjhunwala, is what is required to change the world. Like, for me, when I think of deep tech, I think it is what is going to really bring a positive change to our lives in a way which can impact it on a daily basis, whether it's work, whether it's at home, whether it's in biosciences, all areas. And when we're talking about where it starts from schooling. So when you say academia, I think we are sitting in IIT Madras today. This is a prime example. It's not like student schooling anymore. The professors are not just teaching in the classroom. You are a prime example again of that. Like, there's so many startups coming out of IIT Madras because they're getting the ecosystem, they're getting the structure, they're getting the support, the understanding of how they can convert their ideas into a business. After that, the government again, you can come back to IIT, you can come back to Indian Institute of Science, you're creating places like this research park, you're creating places like the art park. All of these pieces are giving the companies, the students, that ecosystem again to be able to build their businesses, build something out of which was academic and theoretical at one point and convert it into something that can be used to impact lives. From an industry perspective, I think companies are a lot more open now to letting tech in. Earlier there was like a high mental barrier, there was a lot of fear of how these things will work. But a lot more companies are now willing to let companies come in, do experiments, do trials, do POCs. And when they work, they go to a larger scale and deploy it across multiple plants. Like I'm talking from a manufacturing perspective, for instance. But those kind of things are happening now. And last but not least, the VCs and the incubators. They provided funding, and I see Chirag, for instance, right? Like he's not just doing the job of providing money, he's giving regular mentorship to the companies. There's times when he's going to make slides for the startups that he's working with. I know the ATEX team, they provide like an HR function for the companies that need support. Like, and I'm so proud of the ATEX team and the kind of work they do with the startups. So I think all of these things together, make up an entire ecosystem which allows these deep tech companies to flourish and create impact-making changes to our lives.
Yeah, I will follow. And yet, I will sort of say, India is expected to follow the West. It is West which has historically, at least in last few hundred years, known to be the technology leader, and everybody should follow in one way or the other. Of course, that West then broadened to Japan, then Korea, and today increasingly China. Maybe they develop basic technology, and we are supposed to catch up, maybe indigenize, maybe take some of the things and do this. How do you see the deep tech and these all ventures taking India, making India a leader? I'll give you an example of one of your companies, one of the companies that you've incubated, Solinas. What does Solinas do? It has developed all kind of small robotic devices which actually can enter pipes. It can figure out where the blockages are, underground pipes, figure out where the blockages are, and even clean the pipe. I do not think there are, and do it at a very, very low cost. I do not think there are companies in the world which can do as well as that. Where do you see this transitioning taking place, where at least in some areas, if not many, India is considered a leader and not the follower of China, Korea, Japan, Germany or US?
the areas that are, space program, for instance, is one area that we think really made a mark, where we made people sit up and take notice of India, like at the cost we did it at, the way we did it. So I think it's not that, obviously a lot of the brains that are doing this work are Indian brains, whether it's coming from the West. We may say Silicon Valley, but the brain is primarily Indian. So it's not, I think, India or Indians per se who are not doing the best work, but I think, again, it comes down to the ecosystem for me. Because when you're creating the right ecosystem, then people are willing to take risks. When people are willing to take risks and get supported for those risks, I don't know exactly which areas we would flourish in, but I can see a lot of areas where we should be able to flourish given that right support.
Surendra sir, yes, we clearly agree that it is the Indians all over the world, and many of them are our students, who are actually doing immense amount of innovation work. That part taken. But we very often talk about them. We do not talk about those in India taking up more challenging work. And we do not even often celebrate it. For example, I was pointing out that your own effort of moving away from textile to really creating these electric buses, all the way to electric buses in one generation, is something that should be celebrated far more than it is done. That's not given as a prime example very often. But I'll take another example. UPI. Today, we are very clearly the leaders in payment. And it has happened over the last 15, 20 years. From practically nowhere, we started some digital transaction, and we are clearly the leader. Or take another example, Aadhaar. I mean, the kind of system that we have been able to create, the size that we have been able to create, and the cost at which we are creating. For example, a UPI transaction today costs less than 1 paise. Can you even imagine anyone else in the world able to do that? So what are your thoughts on actually taking leadership, using deep data?
As you very rightly said, that though Indians are doing outside India, but such stories are not there in India, or even if they are there, they are very, very few. Like you named the UPI and those kind of things. So I would say this fear of failing is the main reason for it. Fear of failing. Once we overcome it, and once we think that even if I fail, so there should not be any word such as fail in anybody's mind. You never fail. Failing, even if you are not successful in one attempt, then you have got some learnings. Second time you are using those learnings and moving a step ahead. Second time again, if you are not successful, then you are moving ahead with those learnings also. And with those 1 time, 2 time, 3 time, 4 time, 5 times learning, you are moving ahead, and ultimately you will be successful. So if we remove this word of failing, then we are successful. It is as simple as that. So this fear of failing.
Dr. Jhunjhunwala, I have a question for you. This last question that you asked, what's your view on that? What's your view on that?
My view on, so I'll take another example, and similar. And again, our not talking about it is a different kind of failure. Though I totally agree with him that any success is failure, fall, get up, try again, fail again get up, again try. Success comes after repeated failure. Unfortunately, I want to point out that our governments does not understand that. In fact, even a little bit of funds that they provide, they expect that you have to succeed. You have to succeed, and if you don't succeed, you have done some fraud. In fact, when we take any money from the government, sometimes we're very worried because if there is a failure of any kind, we are ostracized, and therefore we actually attempt to do minimal, present minimal, and do that. But let me come back to the UPI and the example that I talked about. How much do you pay for your 5G mobile service in Dubai per month? Tell me. Tell me.
I pay approximately 500 dirhams.
Convert into rupees. I don't know what dirham is. Huh?
I
12,500.
Huh?
12,500.
And most of us pay 350 rupees. Now why? Why 250, 350, 400 and we get as good a telecom service on every single thing? And why do you have to pay 10,000 rupees plus and some other place even more? One will say, oh no, because our costs, manpower costs, etc. It's nothing to do with it. I think we have done in technology far more than we can imagine. For example, I'll tell you, when I took over as the chairman of State Bank of India Technology Committee, we actually calculated that if we do a digital banking transaction, how much does it cost the bank? It used to be 1 rupee 25 paise. By the time we left, it was close to 10 to 12 paise. While the rest of the world was still doing it closer to a rupee 25. When it came to a telecom transaction, for example, every time a telephone calls are made, when the billing used to include that who did you call from, how many minutes you called, and charges were computed as per that. Once again, our costs were very high. It is India who brought it down by a factor of 5 to 6, and then that, for example, IBM was one of the company who was forced to do this for Bharti. And when they did that, they could actually take the result, the same technology to Europe, to all over the world, and this was done in India. So very often, what I am pointing out that we don't even try to point this out. I mean, this very simple fact that you pay 10,000 rupees and we pay 400 rupees for same service. Why? Nobody talks about it. And this is not a material. This is, we use the same base station, same switches, but our transaction costs have come down because our all back-end costing, etc., we have reduced it very significantly. In fact, even Maruti, part of the reason it succeeded big at that time, because it was able to get the car to a very low cost. And it couldn't have done it without the kind of components that you actually make.
Was the main reason.
If India's affordability is low, if we put our mind into that and make anything affordable in India, it succeeds not just in India but all over the world. But I want to come back. We very often we talk about deep tech as tech. For me, tech has no meaning unless it does two important things. First, tech is financially viable. It makes a product which is financially viable. The economics of the product must work out. It must match the affordability of the market. Without that, it doesn't succeed. The second, and the deep tech actually means, it solves our deep-rooted problem. Very rarely do I see conversation taking place. What are the big problems of India? How can tech help solve the problem? We do the reverse. We first talk about tech and say, how can we apply? Why don't we start talking from fundamentals? What are our problems? Big problems. And how does tech help solve it? Again, in context of Solinas, what I am talking about. For example, nowadays, with increasing GHG emission, we have floods in Chennai every year for 2 to 3 days. Life is paralyzed. Now, can tech solve that? Are we even ready to work on technologies that can solve that? Of course, the work that Solinas will do will be an important component. But are we ready to solve the problem and say, okay, at least 10 years down the line, we will ensure that Chennai will not have any floods, at least waterlogging, the rainfall will only increase. And same thing we'll do it for every city of ours and then take it all over the world. If we do this, if we solve our problem and not talk about tech, but problem and solving problem, then we will be the leader. I want your comments.
As you very rightly said, if we have a problem in front of us and we can solve it, but always we have to see that it is commercially viable and we are competitive. If the price is so high that that problem becomes bigger than the real problem, then it is not doable. So we have to ensure that we are competitive in it, which is sellable in the market, and where the large public, more and more people will go for it and they will buy it. Once they start buying it, so whatever investment is made, that will be paid off very fast, but we have to be competitive. So it's a very simple solution from that angle.
Dr. Jhunjhunwala, when you were talking right now about the Chennai floods problem and finding the solution to it, it impacts everybody. It impacts the people living in Chennai, impacts the government, it impacts everybody, the businesses, households, everybody. But when you go to sell this tech, who will be the person paying for it? If you go to them and tell them we have the solution, it will cost you so much. Who will give you the money?
Well, I think if the government has to spend money, government has to spend money. If after all, government spends only our taxes has to pay for it. If it is a problem of the city, then our taxes has to pay for it.
The taxes have to pay for it, correct? But do they? Because when it comes to the push of it, when you actually say this is a product we have, is the government willing to put the money where the requirement is?
I think if we have a solution and we put forward the solution and show that it works, no government will dare to not put money in it.
You know, because this is the problem we face regularly, not just with government, but with companies as well. When we go to sell a product, and actually if I answer this question from both sides, the first part you said is absolutely correct. There's a lot of people who come to JPM to sell us like tech products as well, right? And when they come to us, they're like, this is the product we have. But we're like, this is not the problem we have. Our problem is drinking soup. They're like, but we have a beautiful fork. But we're not eating noodles, we have soup. Doesn't matter, the fork is amazing. It's the best fork you've ever seen. But so they don't understand that the problem is not meeting the product. The second thing also comes when there is an obvious problem. Like if you start out with a problem statement of, please tell us your biggest problems and then let us help you solve them. So many times that will happen. And then when you develop a product for them, then the question comes, do we have to pay this much for it? Then who will pay for it? Will the customer? And I tell you where we have seen people pay for it also. When, for instance, if I take a JPM example, if there is a product like in manufacturing which say doesn't make sense for you to pay, but it makes sense for your customer, then your customer might be willing to pay for it. Sometimes the customer will push the vendor to pay for it. So there has to be a very clear understanding of who is willing to pay for it, who does it really impact at the end of the day.
I totally agree. Without a market, without understanding the market, any technology development is meaningless. So for example, again coming back to when we started reducing the cost of telecom, we realized that when we reduce the cost of telecom, instead of 10 million subscribers, we will have 100 million subscribers and we have a billion subscribers. And if a billion subscriber pays an average of 200 rupees, it will be more than enough for us for our R&D. And it is based on that, we founded this company called Tejas Networks. And we said we will become the leaders in the world. Wireless will become the 94 we started working on wireless. And our clear objective was we want to be the leaders in the world. And we founded Tejas, and Tejas is one of the 6 companies in the world which has 5G technology. There is Huawei, ZTE, Ericsson, Nokia, Samsung and Tejas. There is no 7th company. And let me tell you, in a few years, it will not be, we will not be, today we are number 6, but in a few years we will be number 3 at least. So, working for our problem, finding the right solution, finding low cost will certainly play. I will now reverse this. You are a venture capitalist. And your Arya ji mentioned, Surendra ji said that any venture is about failing, falling, getting up, trying again, failing again, falling, again getting up, trying again and succeeding. What is the venture capital attitude? What is the attitude of 8x towards such failure? What happens when you see people trying to climb mountains and falling down but not giving up? How do you handle that? How does a venture capital, particularly if you have a fund which has to be a 5-year fund, how do you handle?
I think one of the biggest things that we do at Index is a lot of mentoring and hand-holding. The part it is, people are going to fall. That is a fundamental part of the game, right? Like it's a fundamental part of like being in this business of doing a startup. You are going to succeed, you are going to fail. One is identifying the point to get into it, where you see there's a certain amount of success that you know that this company will succeed. And I think a lot of that also comes from judging the people who are doing the business and the capacity they have to learn from the failures and move towards success. Because I think the biggest problem comes when the caliber or the mental strength of an individual is not capable to take a failure and convert it into like another trying to succeed again. And I think that really, really makes a difference for us. And hand-holding along the way and providing that support, and I think that is the network we are creating, which allows people to get the learning which they don't have.
So I'll give you a slightly different spin on industry, academia, startup collaboration and this problem that we are discussing. How do you, when do you take up very, very impossible problem, try to start working on impossible problem, trying to solve them and willing to fail and fall? I agree that venture fund, for example, if I am investing in a company, I will still like the company to succeed at a reasonable chance. So venture fund will have a problem. I was a member of Prime Minister's Scientific Advisory Committee around 2008-9. We raised this question in the committee with the Prime Minister, the then Prime Minister. They had already started CSR, that a company will have to pay 1% or 2% of their profits into CSR. And government was not spending enough on R&D. We actually pushed the Prime Minister that allows CSR for R&D. And there was quite a bit of discussion. CSR is primarily for doing some social service. We sort of said that CSR for R&D can play a very, very important role and bring industry, academia and startup, and academia and startup together. So what it does is that while the startup may come with a venture fund, the academia may get some CSR money to work together on the same problems. So the failing part, and which you will fail in the beginning, is little bit cushioned. No, it gives you opportunity to stand up again. And when this collaboration works out nicely, of course only for very complex, deep problem, then your falling, getting up and trying again becomes real. So we in India still, probably many corporates do not understand that very well. The CSR for R&D will go hand in hand with startup and academia working together, partly with CSR money, partly with the venture money, and finally going all the way towards success. That is something that the 8x venture should really look at. Look at complex problem back, put maybe 15-20% of the money to absolutely impossible problems, as long as you find the team to be very determined, very clear, ready to fail and get up and not give up. That's the key message that I will say to 8x. Sir, you with your experience, your comments.
I would say that I think Chirag will have to ask all the investors what are their views on this particular point. But definitely as a corporate house, I would like to request all my colleagues in corporate world that they should promote this idea what you are saying. And they should promote these new ventures, new whatever technologies are being developed, and we should be really encouraging them to fail and learn and then again move forward. But definitely the support has to be provided by the corporate houses, then only it can happen, and we should not be really getting away from these things. We must support. That is my view on this.
You want to add something, or should I go to the next thing?
I think between the two of you covered it.
Let me ask another question, this time trying to put you on a little bit of spot. Earlier I talked about downstairs while coming up, you saw EV chargers. Now, today what do we do? I don't exactly know what your company do, but most others, I know most other companies, we actually get the product from China. Do a little bit of dress up. Occasionally, we may not get the full product from China, but we'll get it in CKD form and put it. In either case, we are doing relatively low value add. Vis-a-vis a company like what you saw, the startup that you saw there, which actually makes the complete product. Now, of course, they don't have the experience. They are not making in 100,000 volume with a Chinese company. They may therefore be a little bit even higher, may not be much higher, but at least they don't have the experience. So if you start asking question, have you already made 10,000 chargers? And if you have not made 10,000 chargers, I will not be able to buy it. How does a company like you, which make electric buses, will look at tech development like this? What will it do for Indian startup vis-a-vis the large-scale Chinese manufacturing?
We will run both the things parallelly. We will keep buying from China. We will keep selling it. Parallelly, we will support such activity and ensure that in next few years, once it is developed, then we replace it.
Thank you. I think, but is all the companies in India are doing it? Then the next point that I want to make on this. See, when you come to leadership like yours, I'm sure you understand what I said and will attempt to do both. But when you leave it to your purchase manager, the purchase manager will say, oh, for me, the Chinese product is absolutely reliable, stable. I can't take risk. If something goes wrong, I'll be fired. How do you make sure that down the line, the decision makers, and I'm not talking about one specific thing, but on everything, and I'm not talking about your company, but for all the companies, how do you make sure down the line they are willing to take up and support Indian designed products from Indian startups?
I think whether it's a purchase person or engineering person in any organization, they are trained for their job. So they have to do their job in a perfect manner so that their products are not failing in the market and they remain commercially viable. But simultaneously, the top management, they have to bring such proposals to the top management's knowledge, and top management should get involved in it. Definitely the manager cannot take such decisions. But once the top management gets involved, then he has no fear that I took this decision and he is not getting fired for that reason.
But sir, a startup will not be able to reach top management. That's the problem. Even with 8X support, suppose it was a 8X company, will they be able to reach the top management very often? So I had yesterday told you that when we were trying to make wireless in local loop and we needed the money, we had to actually go to the top. Sunil Mittal and Mukesh Ambani and Mahendra Natha, then only we were able to get the money. But it is not always possible. Probably for professors of IIT, some young professors who were really very bold could do this. But most startups will not be able to do that. How do you handle it?
उनको लगे रहना होगा, टॉप तक पहुंचने के लिए लगे रहना होगा और पहुंचना ही पड़ेगा. उसके लिए जो भी करना पड़ता है दिन रात एक करते हैं, वो डॉक्टर पहुंचे।
एलिवेटर पिच भी होता है कुछ, तो एलिवेटर पिच भी देना पड़ेगा, हाँ? तो आई थिंक pretty much I think he's already knocking that. I think we are exceeding time. I want to point out that I was given a script and I was told that you will ask only those questions, and the answers also were given. They will only give this answer. Well, this is our team does, not just you, but everybody. Team does that. We want everything to be well structured, not to go wrong. But I'm very glad that Esha came to me just before our conversation started. He says, just throw that away and just talk from your head. And I think we did that, and I hope we have raised some good questions. I'll request both of them to end by saying something.
Sorry, so I know he's nodding his head, but before we end, I have one more question for you. You asked us for what qualities we as a VC look at in the startups we invest in. What about you? There's so many students who you see go through this process. Who are the ones who succeed at doing this?
I can tell you a little story about one of our most successful startup. When they succeeded and they got the last $500 million last time they raised in US, and they were considered a $2.5 billion company. And New York Stock Exchange put a big sign congratulating them. And there was below that sign, a TV commentator was interviewing the founder. And he asked the question that, you know, there are many things that you talk about, but you also keep talking about IIT Madras Research Park and Innovation Center and some Professor Jhunjhunwala. What did they do for you? What did they do for you? That entrepreneur said that we were like coal in a coal mine. Professor Jhunjhunwala entered that coal mine with a jhola. He started picking up the stones and examining them, kept a few in the jhola, threw most of it away. We are lucky that he took us in the jhola. But that, the kind of person he is, he came out and started cutting us. Very painful, extremely painful. Most of us crumbled. Those of us who crumbled went back to the coal mine. We are lucky to have not crumbled. And we thought that now we are safe. But Jhunjhunwala did not stop there. He then took out a file and started rubbing it. It is even more painful, but it's a continuous pain. Again, many of us crumbled. We went back to the coal mine. We survived and we became uniform. So, when you take 22-year-old, and our expertise is taking 22, 25-year-old youngsters and actually making them entrepreneurs, it's extremely painful for them and for us, because to even inflict that cutting or rubbing is not easy. But if you don't do that, you don't succeed. And it is a certain amount of this. They have a lot to learn. They have the enthusiasm, they have the will, and then you have to really nurture them. And that's the reason we use this term, the incubation. Incubation is like really, really preparing them. And I think we have done a lot. And all that I can say is not an easy process. But if you become little loose and say chalta hai, that's the end of it. Let them fail, we are not bothered. But learn from every failure and succeed. The slogan that he gave.
Before I let you all go,
just say one sentence. Like what you said, what's my message? Basically, अपना मनोबल ऊंचा रखें, आत्मविश्वास से भरे रहें और अपने ट्रस्ट को कभी ख़त्म ना होने दें. जिस किसी के साथ कोई भी काम करें, ट्रस्ट शुड ऑलवेज रिमेन. एक बार आपका ट्रस्ट टूट गया तो कुछ नहीं. और ऊर्जा, एनर्जी आपके अंदर इतनी होनी चाहिए कि उस ऊर्जा से आप किसी भी काम को करने में घबराएं नहीं और निरंतरता बनाए रखें। कॉन्टिन्यूटी इज द सक्सेस। थैंक यू सो मच।
या मैंने चिराग में वही एनर्जी देखी है। हाँ, ये गिव अप नहीं करेगा एंड इसीलिए ये जीतेगा। थैंक यू।
Thank you, sir.